This is Resolute and the Resolute Podcast. My name is Vince Miller, your founder and host. And today we're in a series that we have entitled From Addiction to Freedom. Today we're discussing the topic of insanity. Welcome to the program. If this is your very first time tuning in, well, thank you for joining us. Our mission is to disciple and develop men to lead. And if you're looking for content for your men's group or men's ministry, then you need to go to our website today at beresolute.org. We have numerous tools for men who are leading other men, including some new small group series that we know that you would love to have for your men's group. And now, gentlemen, let's dive in. Well, today I'm joined again by Joel Carlson. He is a guy who himself is moving from addiction to freedom, addiction to restoration, and addiction to healing. Well, Joel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Vince. Great to be here.
So, you have used this phrase that really drew me into the message of God working through you. It was the phrase, I can't, he can, and I'm going to let him. And those 8 words are very powerful to move us from addiction to freedom, I believe, and addiction to restoration and addiction to healing, right?
That's right.
But I have also heard you say in one of the previous podcasts that there's this feeling of hitting rock bottom. And it's very, I think, hard to describe what it feels like for us to hit rock bottom, yet we know when we're there, don't we?
Yeah, sadly we do.
We know when we're there, and I think guys like you have been there, and guys like me have been there, and there's probably a bunch of guys listening today that understand what that in essence means, but I think you capture it really well with this topic of insanity. Yeah. Because I think that describes what it feels like to hit rock bottom. I'm wondering if what you mean by that phrase and what you mean by this word insanity is that you've tried everything else multiple times. You end up with the same results and you know you need something different. Am I close to right here?
Well, you're absolutely right. That's really the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. And that's exactly where I landed when it came to insanity, and sort of a great wrap up to the I can't model that we're doing here is recognizing, as we discussed, the powerlessness of whatever the issue in your life might be, coming to grips with it, being honest with it, and saying, this is a problem, I have no control over it anymore, and then accepting it, and then working towards getting into a more healthy state. But by doing that, for me, I had to go back and see how I got to that point, and it truly did become a state of insanity where it was so out of control, but I kept doing the same thing over and over again, thinking that the outcome was going to be different, and ultimately it never was until I got caught and then was able to really start moving forward and working towards the path that I feel like I'm getting on today.
Okay, so here's something I'm thinking about as you're sharing that. I'm thinking about the story of the prodigal son. I'm thinking about him choosing to live his life his way, but he has to learn on his own, right? He has to really learn from the circumstances of life on his own before he really understands. Now, tell us how you came to your senses, kind of like this disobedient son came to his senses. What was that moment of coming to your senses where you realized you were completely powerless and you had hit rock bottom?
Yeah, and the sad point for me is that I got to that point well after I had done all this damage to my life and to other people's lives. It's not something that you have to go through a whole traumatic experience and reach a point where you can look back and say, look at all the bad things I did. There are ways in which to stop it as you go along. But for me, it took a long time to find that insanity piece that I had.
So you're saying that you're just saying to the listening audience that, look, we don't have to hit insanity to the point that we destroy everything around us, that we can still hit insanity and come to our senses and not take joy in all the destruction around us, because the destruction around you led to a lot of consequences, and you're right.
Yeah, and that's really the crux of my whole story, is really how it all began. And I was working in the financial services industry. I was working with my parents, actually, my mother specifically, and she had built a really great business in the investment world, and I came on board with her. And she retired in 2006, and I took over the company. Now, at that point, life was going as I saw it, fine. But I was in a state of financial disrepair. My debt was increasing, but I now had entered into a new world of my job that I thought was going to just get me out of those problems. That's insanity right there, thinking automatically something was going to happen that hadn't already happened. And things went well for a couple of years. The income was coming in, which I thought was most important, but the debt was building up, which led into a lot of my character, which we'll talk about later. But then everything came crashing down in 2008 when the markets took a dive. Everyone lost half of their money, and my income dropped almost 80% from 2008 to 2009. So I'm in a state of desperation there. But the character in me, the arrogant side of me, the deceptive, dishonest, I have to look better side of me, didn't want to stop. And so I had to find ways to keep that part of me going. And so instead of humbling myself, which is what people can do along the way when they feel like they're getting to that point of insanity, instead of doing that, I chose a whole different route. And I became a criminally thinking person, where I utilized the investment capital that my clients had, and instead of putting it into a investment I told them I was going to do, I had them deposit it into an account that was just for me. And so what they thought was a safe investment was actually going to me. And over a period of 3 years, almost 4 years, I siphoned about $1.2 million from my clients and literally just sent it over into my own personal account to pay for my expenses, my bills, to keep that lifestyle going that I wanted. And I just kept on doing that over and over again, thinking at some point along the way, things would change, times would change, I'd be able to pay them back. None of those things worked out. But I never got to the point of recognizing that I was completely out of control and truly insane.
So it sounds like there was this mindset shift that really, I don't know if it was very subtle maybe to you, but you were conscious of what you were doing, and you probably you understood, at least, Joel, that you were manipulating the situation. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And did it get worse and worse and worse as you traveled down that road?
The feeling got worse and worse and worse. The guilt got worse and worse and worse. The problem that I ran into, honestly, is that getting away with it was easy at the time. So it kind of went into this mode again where I was so desperate I didn't know what else to do except continue that criminal behavior. But while I kept doing that behavior, I kept feeling worse and worse. And I've been asked many times, was it because of my drinking that I did all this criminal behavior? And the answer to that is no. But I drank because of my criminal behavior.
Oh, I see.
It got worse and worse because getting into that realm of drunkenness and delusion allowed me to, as I've talked about before, create this world where everything would work out fine, where I would win that Powerball ticket, or I would get that big investment and I'd get all this money and everything would be paid back. And that's just not reality. But I got to the point where I believed everything I thought. I was believing my own lies, really, is what it came down to.
So, yeah, you were deceiving, really, yourself. And while there was obsessive drinking going on one side of the fence, there was also criminal behavior on the other side that eventually landed you in prison. these two things were somewhat independent of each other than the fact that the alcohol just made the mindset of insanity worse a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I would assume there's a moment that you broke free from that insanity. Is that right?
Yeah, the moment came much further down the road. It was a blessing for me to get caught.
Did you feel, I just want to interrupt you because I think this is really important. You said it was a blessing for me to get caught.
No doubt.
Okay. I know so many men that say that, whether they're caught in adultery, they're caught in pornography, they're caught in alcohol use, drug use, whatever it might be, they say that. Why was that a blessing, and how is that attached to insanity?
Yeah, now, of course, when I got caught, the moment I got caught, it was a horrible feeling. But as I look back, when it comes down to my choices at work, my choices at home, the way I was treating my wife and being unfaithful to her, the way I was being a father, getting caught ended up being the best thing for me, as I look back, because I can almost say for certainty today, had I not gotten caught, number one, I would have continued my criminal behavior. It wouldn't have stopped. Number two, my drinking would have gotten worse, probably to the point where it could have taken my life. And number three, for sure, my kids would no longer be in my life. It was getting down to that point where they just couldn't trust me anymore. It had to stop at some point, and I wasn't the one that was going to be able to stop it. I was so out of control, I couldn't do it. I had to get caught, and thank the Lord, I did.
Yeah, and so I want the guys out there listening today to really hear that, regardless of where they're at in life or what behaviors they're engaging in privately that no one else knows, there is something relieving about getting caught, because it makes something public that you've been hiding behind your whole life. I know so many men, for example, that hide behind deep pornography use, and then one day get caught, right? One day get caught by their wives, caught by their family members, caught by somebody. They get caught, and it frees them and releases them from this captive prison that has been deceiving them, and it's living this life of insanity privately that no one knows about. And while there are still a lot of damaging effects from all those choices that they've made over years, right, that they've got to figure out how to untangle that hairball, right? They got to figure out what to do with that. They can now move from insanity toward maybe sanity. So the verse that we have for today, Joel, is this, Proverbs 28, Verse 26, it reads this way: "He who trusts in himself is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom is kept safe." He who trusts in himself is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom is kept safe. And you know what I love about those words? I love the fact that it essentially says that we cannot trust ourselves at all. We have to reach outside of ourselves for wisdom. But this means for men that we have got to find truth objectively outside of who we are, not subjective to ourselves. So no matter how right you think you are, you will eventually be wrong. And that's what I love about your story, Joel, is that it speaks so loudly to all of us that we have to stop trusting in ourselves. We have to stop trusting in our own line of thinking. God thinks higher thoughts than us, has greater wisdom than us, has greater forgiveness and love than us. Why not trust in Him with the truth for our life? And that's what's great about breaking the cycle of insanity. It's coming to the moment that we can't, right? I can't. He can, but I'm going to let Him. I can't. And we have got to come to that moment where we hit rock bottom, that moment of insanity, where we realize that our methods, our approaches, our perspective, our wisdom is not enough. We can't figure out how to get out of those things, Joel, no matter how hard we try.
That's right.
Right?
The one thing I would say to that and add on is this is why we're ending the I can't part with insanity, because we need to figure out and backtrack and recognize the powerlessness, recognize the fact we can be honest with it. That's the thing to remember. Even though I was doing all these things that I thought were hidden, I now know that people knew that something was going on, but there was no way they could help me until I was honest about it with them. And so when I was able to do that, accept the things I had done, and start working back that way, then people can work with me. And that's why if there's an adultery situation, a pornography, a gambling, whatever the case may be, the reality is it's probably not completely just your own secret. It's probably known by someone, but they're not going to be able to help you until you start wanting to help yourself. So if you don't do that, you will just cycle into this form of insanity that just doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, it feels pretty hopeless and endless. I think the actionable or the call to action for the guys today would be, if you're struggling with something privately, make it public. Stop living in your own private world of insanity. Don't trust in yourself. That's foolish. But trust in God and seek His freedom in your life by going public with your issues, going public with your struggles. Confess it, repent of it, and break Satan's hold in your life and stop living an insane cycle. Well, Joel, thank you again for being with the show, and we look forward to some of these future podcasts because they're going to be really exciting.
Thank you so much, Vince.
As we close, I want to remind you that we have great content for your men's groups on our website. Excellent small group videos and participant handbooks that will empower the men of your church to lead and equip them and the men around them. Check it all out at beresolute.org, or send me a direct email if you like at info@beresolute.org. You know, if you send me a personal email, I will give you a trial membership so that you can give it a spin with the men that you lead. And as always, I say, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, but please know that the time that we spent together today is worthless unless you choose to do something with it like Joel did. So do something today by getting off the bench and into the game. And I will see you right back here next time on another edition of the Resolute Podcast.